I'm Letwin. I'm the MP for West Dorset. I've been for roughly the last 10 years, and I'm chairman of the Conservative Party's policy review. The wisdom in our system, which forces government bureaucracy, what I've discovered is you learn a whole heap more about them actually here in West Dorset, seeing how they affect people, than you do sitting in Parliament having sort of abstract discussions. A place like West Dorset, you don't have the sort of Mexican standoff that you sometimes get between one kind of thing and another. And I think one of the very encouraging things here is that you've got the public sector, the private sector, and indeed between them the third sector, an enormous range of voluntary enterprises and social enterprises which can work together. And that's partly because things aren't very politicised here. There are clearly different political parties, and at election time have a narrow race always against the Liberals. But the fact is, between elections, we get on and we work together, and so do the different sectors. And I think that's really a model for what can happen in other parts of Britain. And indeed, it's also the case that within the public sector here, there's much more working together than there is in many places. For example, there's a great deal of pooling of the budgets now of the health service and the social services here, which in some places has caused huge friction. And when there was a terrible problem about bed blocking, we were actually able to get the relevant people together who know one another, have grown up in many cases together, are willing to work together, rather than saying, I'm from one agency, you're from another, let's have a fight about it. They actually get together and try to work in the interest of the people here. In West Dorset's case, it's not quite the same as it would be in some of our hardest pressed urban areas. There are estates in urban areas which are coming to bits socially, environmentally, housing, schools. That's not our problem in West Dorset. By and large, it's a nice place to live. Crime is low. Schools are good. We have a good local hospital. Communities are still, in the proper sense, communities. So in my own village, I think there are about 13 or 14 different voluntary societies, even though actually it's only a few hundred people. So there's a case here not of trying to rescue what's falling to bits, but a case of trying to preserve and enhance something that has a real life to it. And I think the most important thing at the moment that faces us is the issue of rural facilities. One of the things I've been campaigning for in Parliament is the Sustainable Communities Bill, which I've helped to redraft, to try and get more of the control over how national money is spent locally into the hands of local people. Because very often I think large bureaucracies sitting in London don't have at the forefront of their minds the needs of a small rural community. It's just very distant from what it feels like in Whitehall. And I think we could do better for local people by having more local control over how the money that's already been spent is spent. There's a real problem that we face in Britain, which has sometimes been described as ghost town Britain, where you have little rural communities that just don't have much by way of facilities. Very often they've lost their school, they've lost the pub, are losing or have lost the post office. The things that glue the community together. And a great part of sustaining those communities is about trying to make sure that they have the facilities that make it possible for people to have a communal life. And one of the things that's become clear is that that's really not very much on the agenda of the great national agencies, which tend inevitably to think in urban and suburban terms. That's where most of the population in Britain lives. It's different in rural communities. And one of the ways we can address that is just to give local people more power over the decision about how to spend the money. There's plenty of government schemes going on, lots of money coming in to the area, but much of it not being spent on the things that matter most to local people. So I've been working with the Local Works campaign to get the Sustainable Communities Bill into a shape where it's practical, and then worked with my shadow cabinet colleagues to make sure that the Conservative Party signed up to it from Russia, from the Maghreb, North Africa, and from a range of other sources that can't be relied on in the Middle East. Now, under those circumstances, if we want to diminish our reliance on those resources for the purpose of energy security going forward, we have to do things which will also reduce carbon output, because when we move from oil and gas to other forms of energy production, inevitably we do reduce carbon output. And the biggest thing we can do actually is to reduce our energy input altogether by being more efficient in the use of it. And people often say to me, isn't it wholly uneconomic to deal with climate change? And I say to them, you're forgetting that a good half of what we need to do is actually about using energy more efficiently, and that's an economic benefit, as many firms, Marks and Spencer, the classic case, are now discovering. And I often tell constituents here who put that point to do some little economics for themselves to work out what would happen if they actually went and bought some energy-saving light bulbs and clad their roofs. And you don't have to do much of a calculation to discover that that's actually money-saving. So that's a lot of what we have to do. But the other side is to make more of what we consume in energy locally on a non-carbon emitting basis. And whether that means using British coal and having carbon capture, or whether it means renewable energy sources, or whether it means biofuels, actually in each case you're solving both the energy security problem and the carbon problem, because you're making yourself dependent on something that you can control rather than on something that you have to import, and you're not producing the carbon when you're producing the energy.